This episode of Finding Demo Surf Fishing is being brought to you by Ninja Tackle. Looking to get yourself a new rod? Oh man, Ninja Tackle's got you hooked up. They got the brand new 7-foot 3-piece travel rod. Two different tips. It's actually 4 pieces, but it's got 2 different tips for different types of fishing. It's really a smart build, really compact, does great. I mean, you can get all the regular to the 7-foot 1-piece. Love that rod. You guys hear me talk about it, the go-to rod. Or if you need any of the Ninja Dagger series, all the way out to size 12. Great rods, great prices. Seriously, good product. If you're a tackle shop and you're looking to get your hands on these, reach out to Ninja Tackle. They are looking to go into tackle shops. So reach out to Matt at ninjatackleva.com and you'll be able to get all that information. Thanks again, Ninja Tackle. Appreciate everything you do. Yes, new week, new episode. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Finding Demo Surf Fishing. We've got a great show lined up for you today. I have been following this individual for quite a while through my fishing adventures. When I first started getting into this, Blake Hunter was one of the guys I talked to. He's like, oh, you got to check out Dusty Hayes. Like, okay, well, I'll start tracking him on social media. And sure enough, lots of good knowledge. And then I got to go see him at a seminar down there at 30A. Learned a bunch, lots of good stuff. So Dusty has been dropping lots of knowledge online throughout his entire life that he's been on social media. And then we're really going to go into his whole story here in a little bit. But yeah, I hope y'all are ready. We got a lot of good knowledge coming your way. So strap in, get those notepads ready, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get it on. All right, Dusty, thanks for coming on, man. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to it all day. I'm super excited.
Same here. I'm very, very, very excited. And this has been a long time coming for me to finally work up enough to send you a message. So thanks for answering it.
Yeah, man. Absolutely.
You've been at this a long time. And like I said on the intro, you've done a lot of good knowledge dropping in the Facebook groups. And you've always been approachable with questions and answers. So, dude, that's really awesome of you. And I got to ask, what drove you to do that before we even get into the big podcast questions?
Man, and I'm sure I'll hit this again, but I just like people catching fish, and everybody has their different way of doing that, whether it's a podcast or a YouTube or a seminar or talking to somebody in a tackle shop. But, you know, just sharing knowledge and not that my knowledge is better than anybody else, but when you have, just personal experience and a personal opinion, there's no one way to do anything. There's 100 ways to do everything. And, if you can share something to get somebody to the next step or put success, in their hands, I mean, that's what it's all about. I mean, you're not out there and you're not a fisherman if you don't care about, helping somebody else get to that goal. And I feel like that's something that a lot of people do, and I feel like there's a lot of people don't want anything to do with. But yeah, that's really what drives me is just, helping people, whether it's guiding or which I don't do anymore, or being in the tackle business, which I'm also not in anymore. But just so many angles of it, just helping somebody along, whether it be a hook recommendation or when to go or where to go kind of thing, and just getting somebody to that next step and helping them out. You never know. It may be somebody that could probably figure it out on their own and didn't really need that help, or it might be somebody that you could have just changed their life. Now you got them into whether it be surf fishing or anything, you got them into that for the rest of their life. And, that's a passion that they're going to create. So, with being, you got to be somebody that's willing to share and help somebody. You don't have to spill every secret in the book, but, just kind of give somebody that next step to move on with their career, life and passion and such. And it's just kind of one of those things you got to do.
Oh, most definitely. And I think it's great. You hit some great points there too of, we should all be sharing our knowledge to try to help somebody. And you never know, you could change their whole outlook in life on fishing. So great advice just starting off. So let's rewind the clock, man. Let's bring it way back. Let's start at the normal, the opening of every show. So tell us your story and what got you into fishing.
Yeah. So I've been fishing for as long as I can remember, and I think just like most people, I grew up kind of the first fish you catch is with a bobber and a worm, and catching bluegill and catfish and bass in a pond, and you progress from there. I grew up in Georgia when I was little, and then moved to Virginia for a year, and then by 10 years old, I'm living in Orange Beach, Alabama, and well, actually Gulf Shores first, and I was really lucky. I mean, spend the time on the beach. I mean, at a young age. I mean, before I could drive, and lived at a condo on the beach, and so I would skip school. I would tell my mom, "Hey, I'm going to school." I'd throw my backpack in the stairwell, grab my surf rods, and off to the beach I went. And that was a good little run until the principal called and asked, like, "Hey, your son hadn't been at school in 2 weeks." Um, so it just all that stuff, man. I mean, that's what I wanted to do. I like to hunt, but I didn't have any family members that hunted. And I really didn't have any that fished, and so I kind of something I really did on my own. And I'm not going to say I'm self-taught because nobody is, but I figured a lot of stuff out on my own. And then you run into figures along the way that really help you out and get you where you need to be. And whether it be a captain at a marina or some guy you met at the store or a buddy of yours, and man, there's countless people I can name off, but I remember being a teenager, some of the first guys I talked to about pompano was a guy named Joey that worked at Mo Fishing in Orange Beach, and uh, Joey did a lot of bill fishing and stuff, and I went into another tackle store. I'm not going to say who and where and when, but they had like, "Oh man, pompano aren't biting right now," and I was like, "Okay." And this was like the first week of March, and I go into another tackle store, and this guy Joey, he's like, "Man, you need a pompano rig, and you need some shrimp." And this was a long time ago, and went out there and caught my first pompano, and I was like, "Okay, well, this is awesome," and it grew from there. And then I start bothering people like Chris Veche at Sam's, and I feel like I mirrored Chris for a long time. He worked at Top Gun Tackle in Orange Beach, and then moved to Sam's, and I worked at Top Gun, and then it swapped hands to Lost Bay, and then I'll move to Sam's after that. And Chris taught me a ton from when I was in high school. I bought so much stuff from him, and he gave me so much information, and he still does. And I'm really lucky to call him one of my best friends to this day. But that's just one of those things. Like I said, that's how I started, and it really just fishing. I mean, I fished on every dock, I fished in every pond. I got kicked up to so many golf courses and neighborhoods, and um, just people's docks. I mean, I would sneak out at midnight and fish every dock on Cotton Bayou in Orange Beach, and I've got the cops called on me so many times, but that's what I wanted to do. I worked at the golf course in Gulf Shores, and after we get done washing golf carts, I'd go fish the ponds on the whole course in the middle of the night. So um, just love to fish, and it's not just saltwater. It's not just surf fishing. It's not just fly fishing. It's everything. I mean, it's like to catch fish. I mean, I keep an ultralight in my truck, and if I see a body of water, I'm gonna fish it. So it's a passion for sure.
Yeah, and you can hear it in every word you're saying too. You can rip. I mean, I can feel it over here how much you love it and how much it's been a part of you. So, dude, super cool. I can only imagine the stories that you've got built up, especially doing the ponds at night. We've talked before. Well, today mostly. You kind of dropped a new little bit of information on me, and I wanted to ask you about it. So, what type of fishing do you like to do?
Man, I do everything. Like I can't say that there's one that's really a favorite over another. I do everything from fly fishing for freshwater trout to smallmouth bass or red eye bass. Do a lot of kayak fishing in the rivers for various black bass species. Kayak fishing for saltwater species, redfish, trout, tarpon, striper, etc. And I'd say, and I know I told you this earlier. I just recently moved to Montgomery, Alabama, and so I'm 2.5, which are 2 hours 45 minutes from the coast. And that's all my family and all majority of my friends are still there, so I go often. I was there this past weekend, and I'll be there this weekend. So I don't saltwater fish like I used to, and I definitely don't surf fish like I used to. I actually sold every piece of surf tackle I have except for what I would say my fly fishing surf tackle. But I mean, I do it all. I just enjoy fishing. Taking a trip this year in August with a bunch of my best friends to Everglades City for tarpon and snook, and I'll be going to North, Tennessee and North Alabama and such for smallmouth here in a few weeks, and I fished redfish and trout and stripers this past weekend. I mean, I really enjoy it all. There's not much that I don't care for. Um, you go through phases where there's something that's really you're keyed in on, and that's your main goal. It's like, hey, I want to go do this, or I want to go here, I want to do that. But man, I just like to fish. I like being outdoors. I like being on the water, and it really, when you share that with your friends and such, that's what makes it what it is. Is having a friend group that you go to these places and see these awesome scenery and catch these fish that you've been after for a long time. And that's what makes it for me.
Oh, for sure, man. Totally get that. Well, you kind of nailed this a little bit here. So, I'll ask in a straight term. What's your favorite thing about fishing?
Man, there's so many things. I mean, there's that
Yeah.
success when you catch that fish that you've been after. Like when you land that fish. Like, man, I've been after this. I've been wanting this. I've been thinking about this for months and months and months. And like right now, I'm not gonna lie. Like my big goal coming up this spring is in summer. When I do go to the beach, I want to spend more time on the beach with the fly rod. And it's so if I catch pompano and such on the fly rod, that's a goal that I've caught a God knows how many pompano in my life, but like to do it on the fly and use something that I've tied, that's a check on the list for me. It's like, man, it'll hype me up. I would say that, and then also, man, I'm a tackle junkie. I'm a gear junkie, and so like I enjoy collecting and hoarding. Whether it's conventional tackle, rods, reels, flies, twitch baits, hard baits, old bass, bass fishing crankbaits, and you name it. Just stuff from a long time ago to new stuff that just came out. I would say that's probably my favorite thing about fishing is the gear. I'll probably spend more time and money looking into gear and buying it and using it and such than I do actually fishing. And that's changed dramatically as I've gotten older. I used to be didn't care what I was using, what I was throwing. I just wanted to catch a fish, and as I've gotten older, I really appreciate having nicer things and not over the top stuff. There's a point where it's like, all right, I'm not going to do that for catching a fish, but stuff that's collectors or has a meaning, certain reels that are handmade and American made that, somebody made and you might not be able to get here in 5 or 6 years, and having something like that that is not going to be available. It's not a Shimano whatever that you can go buy probably for the next 100 years. It's something that, you may not be able to get after said person passes away. And so stuff like that is what really means a lot to me. And as far as the fishing in a whole, I mean that's the stuff I like about it. I'm sitting in my office right now looking at all the stuff I have collected, and really just in the past few years, all the artwork and the collector's reels and flies that people have given me and stuff like and lures people have given me, and it's just that's what I love about it.
Dude, that's a lot of love right there. I didn't know you were a collector. That's kind of cool. I'm sure you've got any piece in particular is your absolute favorite?
Man, I didn't know I was a collector either, to be honest with you.
It happens to us
My
all.
fiance's given me a ton of books, and just so many. And I've had old charter customers send me books like, "Hey, man, I had this for years. I don't need it. I don't want it." I would say probably my most favorite thing that I have currently. I have some Dave Whitlock prints, and Dave Whitlock currently, he passed away a few months ago. I want to say December or January, and he was a fly fishing, legend. I would say that, or I have a art piece. It's a shadow box that my fiance got me for Christmas, and it's a fly that's tied into a smallmouth bass that my buddy Brandon tied for me. Bailey got it for me for Christmas, and man, it's something awesome. I'll have to send you a picture of it. It's a piece of art, and I mean it's just gorgeous to see somebody turn natural hair, deer hair into a piece of art like that. It's really cool. It's sitting on my top shelf on my bookshelf. So
I'm looking forward to that text. That's pretty cool, man. I look forward to seeing that.
oh yeah.
So let's talk a funny one here. So do you have a craziest or favorite catch story?
That one really stumps me. There's just so much cool stuff
Okay.
I've been a part of, and I caught a big trout last Mother's Day on the beach. Me and Chris were walking the beach one morning, and I've walked the beach a million times, throwing hard baits for trout and stuff, and I've caught a good many trout, and I've just never caught that one. And last Mother's Day, I caught that one. It was a little over 28-inch fish, and
Wow.
we measured it on the rod, and we gave it a humble measurement. So it could have been, a little more. And in Alabama, the trout that you catch Gulf side versus Bay side it's a totally different animal. The girth, the strength, I mean, just the overall weight of that fish and fight of that fish is night and day. I mean, you catch a 20-inch fish that's just absolutely stout on the Gulf side, and you catch a 20-inch fish in the Bay that's just scrawny and lanky. And so those Gulf trout are just such a different animal. And I caught one that was 28 and some change, and that was a super memorable catch. So finally, just get to that mark. I caught a bunch of 25s and 26s and even 27s, and a lot of those were stuff that my customers have caught over the years, and I'm tagged or at least for the CCA and such. But I've had been on the rod end for one, and so to catch one that big is really special. And then there's just I could probably think of 100 other things on top of that. I'm not even a trout junkie, but that one was just really cool.
Mm.
But there's just so many things from cobia on the beach to net and snook in Alabama, and catch a permit and bonefish in Alabama, and just, man, so many things that come to mind, and I couldn't even begin to even think of something.
Okay. That still, I mean, you're right. There is a weird difference between the bays and just trout in general are very interesting little creatures, and delicious and wonderful and beautiful, but very interesting. Well, so let me ask you this then. Is there a fish that is on your bucket list to catch?
As far as this absolute extreme craziness, I would like to go to Harvey Bay in Australia and fly fish for black marlin. That would be, it's not that far out of reach. It just takes a lot of planning and a little bit of money to do so. But I think in a more realistic sense, I would like, this year anyways, my goal is to catch some snook. I've handled snook. I've seen snook caught. I've netted snook. I've never actually caught one myself. So that's on the goal for this year, or the biggest goal for this year. I'd like to do possibly some muskie fishing, and I think, like I said, for now that's probably my biggest, up next. And then I would like to get a big tarpon on the fly. Caught plenty of juveniles, but I want to get a sure enough big one on the fly. So I think that's probably my next bucket list at the moment. And then that. And if I had to add to that, which I would say honestly probably be close to the top, would be going up north, Wisconsin, Michigan, somewhere in the Midwest, and fly fishing with, there's a bunch of good guys up there, Tim Landor and Schultz and those guys, and fishing for big smallmouth on the fly, catching a 20-incher. I think that would probably be something that would be, man, top of the list for me, would be a 20-inch smallmouth on the fly.
I have a feeling you're going to do that. So
Yeah.
I don't think I think it's just going to be a matter of when, not if. So that's going to be a fun post to see.
It's definitely something, especially like I said, going up north to smallmouth fish. It's like you said, it's not an if, it's a when. It's something I was going to try to plan a couple of times this year. I just a lot of things going on. I got to go to a bunch of weddings, and I also have my own this year, and already got a few travel places I'm going, and a honeymoon to Hawaii, and all that stuff. So I got a lot of trips I got to make this year. So that's probably going to be a 2024 trip for sure.
Well, the honeymoon in Hawaii doesn't sound horrible. So that'll be nice, man. Congratulations again on getting engaged, and I didn't realize the wedding was this close. So hope it's it will be. I don't even have to hope. It'll be a great day, and just it'll blow your mind how fast it goes by. I think that's the craziest part.
Yep.
I'm about to actually, March actually, yeah, we're about to be in March. I'm about to celebrate our 14th anniversary, and we were just talking about like, wait, what year is this? Wait, how long have we been married? How long have we been together? It's like, there's no way it's been that fast. It's just, man, it's just a blink of an eye. It's hard to believe how quick it goes. Well, you've already answered the other ones there, so I'm going to move you into the fishing tips, tricks, and knowledge piece here. But before we do that, we're going to have to knock out our bait check for the episode. It is your first bait check of the episode. Hopefully you've caught a bunch of fish by now. That would be awesome. But if you haven't, bring that line in. Check that bait. Make sure it's good to go. If it didn't work out for you, make sure you're changing zones. Maybe you need to be somewhere else. Or maybe you need to change a different bait style. Maybe you need to throw some shrimp, some crab knuckles on. Either way, get that back out there and get back to fishing. This bait check is being brought to you by the Kids Can Fish Foundation. I've said it a bunch of times. I don't know how to say this any better to you guys. It's a great foundation that's running out of Georgia right now, hopefully national one day, Thomas. And they are doing great things for these camps for kids. They're running the 501c3. Lots of great things that they're doing for these kids in the community. They're trying to help them, get out there, get out and fish. We all know how difficult that can be nowadays. So head on over to kidscanfish.net. Take a look at all the cool things that they're doing. The sign up for the St. Simon Island running of the Red Bulls tournament will be opening soon. So if it's something you're interested, keep your eyes peeled for that. So thanks again, Kids Can Fish. Y'all are doing great things. Like you always say, more tackle boxes, less X boxes. So you've been doing this so long with fishing. This stuff is, I know, like just blink of the eye, second nature to you. So one of the ones that I always ask everyone is, how do you personally plan your fishing trips?
Going to assume we're talking about surf fishing trips.
Yeah. Let's stick with the surf for this one.
Right, so,
I could get you on the freshwater, but I haven't started the freshwater podcast because I still can't catch a freshwater fish.
Yeah, well, and I figured that's what you meant. I just, you say fishing trips, man, I just think of so many things. I'm like, So, to be honest with you, my biggest piece of advice I always give so many people was, you're not going to catch them on the couch. You got to go. You're not going to catch them at home. If you're not going fishing, you're not going to catch fish. And there's days where you go do that and you go fishing and you're like, well, I didn't catch a damn thing. Well, there's also those days where you go and you went and you weren't planning on going and you absolutely mashed them.
Oh, yeah.
The tide can be right. The moon can be right. The wind can be right. The bite can be right. And you go over there and you're not catching them. And, the guy next to you is, or you go out there and nobody's catching them. You don't know why. It should be game on, but you have to go to figure those things out. You can't rely on who's catching them on Facebook. You got to realize that these guys posting videos on YouTube, sometimes they hold those videos for 6-8 months before they post that. Or it might be 2 weeks. It might be 4 days. It might be 2 days. But, you got to go to catch fish. I feel like coming up now these days, so many people are so held back on, when do I go? What should I be doing? What should I be throwing? And that's not just in the surf fishing world, that's everywhere. You see all these Facebook groups that I'm a part of, people asking 100 questions, and it goes with, man, so many other things. Like you see guys on turkey hunting pages doing the same thing, like, hey, what gun do I need to use? All that stuff. And I know that's irrelevant, but sometimes you got to step out on your own and just go. And, you can take advice and, you can go ask these people like, hey, what do I need to do? Or where should I be going and all that stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that. But, there's a point in time where you got to go fishing. You take your stuff out and you figure stuff out. And the best thing I can tell somebody, if you want to start planning stuff, pay attention to when you go and when you catch fish and when you don't. You're like, all right. And it could be as simple as the day of the week, a day of the month not the day of the week, but a day of the month to the day of the year. Like I can tell you multiple dates throughout the year that are just highlighted in my head that are just absolutely killer surf fishing dates. And it doesn't matter if it's raining and thunderstorming or if it's bluebird skies and flat palm, the pompano bite is unreal. And it's just because to me, those fish are on a timer, and they have it in their head. They know when they're going where, and obviously that changes everywhere where you're going, whether you're in Panama City or Gulf Shores, Fort Morgan, whatever. But if you don't go, you're not going to know. Now that's easier said than done for most people. Plenty of people got jobs. You may live an hour from the beach. You may live 3 hours from the beach. But to me, I say most people that go surf fishing. And when I say most, I mean, obviously you got the people that you consider locals that go often. That person is going to go enough to kind of figure things out. But if you're coming in town, say spring break, once in the summer, and then fall break, say 3 times a year for 3-4 days or a week, whatever you do, the question shouldn't be, hey, when should I go fishing? It should be, all right, if your family allows you and you can get away from your family, I know that sounds terrible, but if you find time to go fishing in that week that you're there, or most people go sit on the beach all week anyways, you need to be fishing because, some of the best bites you'll get on pompano are midday. If that tide is coming in, it can be 1 o'clock in the afternoon and the bite's just absolutely killer. And you'll go out there the next day and it's absolutely terrible. So all I'm getting at is, I plan stuff, make sure I got all the gear I want. Sometimes I feel like the more I get my gear ready and tackle ready and all that stuff, or the more I let myself down. It seems like the times you just go and grab stuff and get out there is when you really do the best. But to me, in the big picture, is you just got to go. There's so many times I'm so guilty of talking myself out of it. Oh man, I'm not going to go. I don't feel like it. And, I see people just catching the crap out of them. And then I had no reason not to go. I should have gone. I wanted to go, but I didn't. And then there's other times where you go and it's just not great. But if you don't go, you don't know. It's just that simple to me. I mean, you got to go fishing to catch fish.
What about for spot selection? What do you do to choose a spot?
Man, over the years, I kind of noticed where I caught what fish and what time of year. So, I look for various things as far as sandbar setups and stuff, and proximity to deep water, and proximity to structure, whether it be the jetties at the pass or the pass itself, or reefs just offshore, or deeper water just behind those sandbars, or a fishing pier, things like that. And that's also like a very loaded question. If you're talking about speckled trout and redfish and flounder on artificial lures, you're looking for a little bit different thing than you would be pompano fishing. The biggest thing to me is finding an area that you have depth between you and that first sandbar. The beaches, in say Gulf Shores are completely different from the beaches in Destin and so on. That stuff completely changes. But, those fish will come into shallow water. They're not opposed to it, but you got to find those areas where the structure changes, and by structure you mean sandbars and such. But those current swirls and rip tides and all that, that's what's going to wash that bait. And those fish, I feel like a lot of people get really obsessed with, and like I said, this completely depends on your area. But a lot of people get really obsessed with trying to see how far you can get a bait out. I've caught 10 times more fish than I could ever imagine within 15 feet of the bank than I ever have chunking something a mile out. So it really just, man, I can't think of any specific thing, because you can catch a fish on any stretch of beach. I mean, there's fish on all of it. Some places are completely better than others, but there's fish on all of it. And the biggest thing is learning how to read it, look for that deeper water and fish it thoroughly. So you have a trough that runs, east to west. It's 100 yards wide, and the current's running east to west. Well, those fish sometimes will be stacked up on the east side, on the, up current side. Sometimes they're on the down current side, where all that bait's being washed to. And then also sometimes, like when you have a trough like that, so you have like a horseshoe bend sandbar, and you got a deep pocket in front of you. Well, you got to look at where those fish are trying to come in at. So if there's a little deep cut in that sandbar that allows access to that fish to come into that deep pocket, then that's where those fish are going to be coming in and out. Those fish will be in all throughout that whole little area, that deep area. But if you just figure out their little highway where they're coming in and out of, then you can really narrow down on where you need to be casting and your depth and your distance and all that. So I guess really the best way to answer that is it depends on your beach. It depends on, your structure. It depends on, the time of year. There's a lot of information out these days on, what to look for. There's a lot of the YouTube guys that have videos out, really break down the sandbars and such. But, I would say, like I said, any beach will hold fish. I like to look for stuff that has less foot traffic of people in the water if it's the busier months, and also less people fishing. Something I've noticed over the years is you get certain beaches that just get absolutely pounded, and, they'll still produce fish, but not as good as other areas. And you really, 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 I think this is probably the most important part of all of it, is you have to get away from those pieces of structure that are fished every day. You can be, say, let's just say you're at this beach, beach access A. and it is the hot spot. It's always good fishing, right? All these people go out here all the time. All these people post pictures. All these people make videos out there. All that stuff. That's great. But if you go straight down the boardwalk and walk straight away, you know, then you're fishing where every other person is fishing, And so usually what happens, whoever gets out there first is going to walk the least furthest. And then the next five people are going to spread out next to them, and then so on and so on and so on to the point where a few hundred yards to your left, you got people, and a few hundred yards to your right, you got people. Well, really, whether those people are there or not, I want to go past them as far as I can. As far as I want to walk, that's how far I want to go past those people because those fish are coming to that area for a reason, whether it's food or lack of pressure, whatever it may be. But if you're fishing those troughs that get fished every single day, then they get used to seeing those pompano rigs and fish bites and floats and all that stuff. And so without going super, technical and finesse and going down a really light leader, really small hooks, then you can trick those few fish that are left and have seen there, been there, seen it, been there, done that. But if you are willing to walk, and put in the time and the distance to go, man, say a half a mile down the beach. A half a mile sounds like a long ways, but it's really not. It sucks dragging a beach cart that far, but most people aren't going to go that far to fish somewhere that, man, honestly, probably nobody really ever fishes. Maybe somebody here and there, but the fishing pressure, those fish, those resident fish, those whiting and little few redfish and whatever that's hanging out in that trough in that area that aren't seeing rigs all day long, every day from sun up to sundown, those fish will eat, so, and then, your migratory species like the pompano that come in spring and fall or and vice versa, those fish, to me, they get educated. And so, like I said, that's a whole nother story. But I feel like just putting in your time and moving and going where people aren't. This a popular beach is great if people are catching fish there and you see results. But to me, I don't care if I don't catch fish or not. I want to be away from people.
Yeah.
So getting somewhere where you have that freedom just to kind of enjoy 100 yards of beach to yourself, and you can sit back and be like, man, this is gorgeous out here. And I have to worry about what this guy over here next to you is throwing over your other rods, and the guy over to your left is hooking a fish and going underneath your rod. Sometimes you got to get in the middle of it to catch those fish, but if you are willing to put in that time and find there's not many spots left on the Gulf Coast that are like that, from Panama City to Fort Morgan, but we're willing to put in that time to, really weasel your way in there and put that distance and walk to where nobody else is. I mean, you'll see results. I mean, you can have the ugliest pompano rig known to man and some Walmart shrimp and get lucky. It's that simple. It's just finding the fish at the right time in the right place. If you're fishing stuff that gets pounded every day, all day, I mean, there are, no matter what beach you're on, there's troughs and holes that, man, unless it's just nasty surf, there's somebody fishing there with a rig in the water, and those fish get educated. They see that crap all day long, and they're like, yeah, I'm not falling for that. So that's where a major change in tackle comes into play. But I think as far as picking a spot, I know I went off on a tangent there, but
only
really
a little.
just finding somewhere that, yeah,
it's all good, man.
Really just finding somewhere where other people aren't fishing is
Okay.
going to be your biggest key.
Well, you mentioned something that I want to back up to it. You mentioned depending on how you fish, and you mentioned trout and reds, you look for something different. You're the first person to say that to me. What are you looking at that's different?
When I'm walking the beach throwing artificial lures, twitch baits, jerk baits, top waters for trout, redfish, the trough system that I'm looking for, and you'll find them outside of those troughs, but the stuff I'm looking for is completely different than what I'd be looking for pompano. You'll see those trout and those rip currents, and they'll be in the same place a pompano would be. Don't get me wrong, but a lot of times, like your flounder, trout, and redfish that are going to be surf side, you'll see them free swimming and stuff. So out in the middle of nothing, no structure, no sandbar whatsoever. So that's not always the case. But what you really look for is that sandbar that's, pretty much casting distance between where you're standing on the shoreline and, your furthest cast with that lure. And then you have, knee to waist deep water between you and that sandbar. And, if there's current coming through there, I mean, it's just the textbook, perfect scenario for catching those trout and redfish and stuff on hard baits. It's really hard to put it into words. If you have a visual, you can be like, all right, this is what you'd want to look for. This is really something you just kind of walk past. That shallower water that's 2 foot or less, early morning and late evening and nighttime, those fish will definitely be all up in that. But as you get into that, the sun's been up for an hour or two in the morning, the stuff you kind of ease past and start looking for that deeper water stuff. But you want a little bit of depth, and by depth I mean something that's 2+ feet, really, 2 to 4 feet, current moving, sea bait activity, and you'll have trout mixed in with ladyfish and bluefish and Spanish as well, and also redfish too. But those areas that are just kind of like it's almost like a little sanctuary, just right on the shoreline, the deeper cuts right on the bank where you can easily make a cast to. And like I said, those rip tides, rip currents pushing out, you'll have fish in that stuff too. Same as a pompano for the most part. Sometimes it's on a smaller scale, a little closer to the shore. The big difference on, sometimes what you're looking for with pompano and trout, buck pompano get a little sketchy to get into that shallower water sometimes, simply because, and it varies on where you're at, but, they are being preyed on by various birds and people and dolphins and such. And that don't mean the trout won't either, but I feel like trout are a little more ballsy when it comes to hanging out in that shallow water.
Yeah. I can see that. I mean, hell, all the ones I catch are within 15 feet, but that's when I'm doing other types of fishing. That's really cool. Definitely worth something to look into some more. I mean, I've got it written down for me to start understanding that a little bit better. We don't really get trout here, unfortunately, in the Navarre area. I will say that. I wish we did at the beach. That'd be wonderful. I'd be so happy, but I have to go into the back bay, or I got to go inshore a little bit there for that. You already kind of jumped ahead and answered some great questions when it came to how to setting up the gear. So I really only have one question about the setting of gear, because you just crushed it there. And that's going to be, what type of rigs do you use when you're doing, lure, fishing like that? Now, I know you mentioned that you're throwing metal in that one. We can answer that one too if you want. But yeah, let's talk about what kind of rigs you use.
I would say, man, I've always tied my own rigs. I mean, before, I don't want to sound like an old timer and say this and say like back in my day, but like, let's just say 10 years ago, Salty and Frisky Friends and all these people, like they didn't exist in the surf fishing world. And, you had like Sea Striker rigs, and you had Eagle Claw, Pompano rig, and probably a few others that I could think of. And, working at tackle shops, we sold hand tied rigs, Carolina rigs to red snapper rigs to king mackerel rigs for the pier, trolling rigs and trolling lures for billfish to, all that. And so we had to tie on pompano rigs because, you would sell a ton of Eagle Claw rigs and Sea Striker rigs, but you only order so many. And the cooler months, it gave the employees something to do and tie, and you made bigger margins on selling that rig because you're not paying X amount for it to resell it. You're pretty much got just material in it to resell it. So I learned how to do that, early on, and I started playing around with rigs myself. And now it's no secret now, but I found a website. It was walleyesupply.com. I mean, this was like probably 10 years ago. Had all kinds of every color float you could think of for walleye fishing. The pill floats, and man, I'd get pink and I'd get purple and I'd get black and polka dot and all that stuff, and tie my own rigs. And I like a double rig. And man, we would joke around and get crazy and tie pompano rigs with 6 hooks on them just to be stupid. I would say my favorite though is a single drop rig. I would do probably 4 foot a leader overall, really long leader. I would have my first drop. It'd be about let's say about an 8 to 10 inch drop, and it would be about let's say a foot to 18 inches from your swivel. And I'd have that going down to a hook. Hook would vary. I'm a Kale hook fan, not a big circle hook fan. I really don't like them. There's times and places where circle hook absolutely rules the surf. I like them like whiting fishing, especially in the fall when they're just biting really fast. But pompano fishing, I'm a big time Kale hook person. Every person's going to tell you something different, and that's fine. I don't think that a circle hook is bad. I just not going to use them. If I'm tying a pompano rig for myself, I'm putting a kill hook on there all day, every day, no questions asked until they tell me otherwise that it's illegal. I'm putting a kill hook on there. Um, I used to use, man, I would use 20-pound mono for just about everything, and I also use 20-pound fluorocarbon. This is something that's probably too in depth, and most people probably wouldn't care about this, but something I always used to think about, and I still do to this day when it comes to my pompano rigs. So monofilament is more dense in the water and it's going to float. Now it makes it visible as well. And fluorocarbon is the opposite, less dense in the water, makes it invisible. But fluorocarbon sinks where monofilament will float. So that being said, on a pompano rig, like say you're throwing a topwater lure, your topwater with fluorocarbon is going to want to dig down because that leader or whole line is fluorocarbon, so it's not going to have the same action versus a completely buoyant line that is monofilament. It's going to completely float on the surface. So you transition that thought into a pompano rig. Well, you got your weight at the bottom, anchoring yourself down, and it's tethered tight to your rod tip, at however many feet, yards you want to put it from your cast. And really, the only weight stopping it is that swivel that's kind of bringing it down just a little bit. If you keep it just hard enough for the heavy weight, it's going to suspend. But a fluorocarbon leader is going to want to fall and float against the bottom, which isn't a bad thing at all. It's going to put your bait closer to the bottom. Even with a pill float on there and a hook and a bait, it's still going to want to hug the bottom. Versus the monofilament leader is already buoyant, naturally buoyant. So when you put a pill float on there, it's going to want to pick it up a little bit. Which one's better or worse? Man, I can't tell you. I've fished monofilament, fluorocarbon side by side plenty of times, and fluorocarbon will do better than monofilament, and vice versa. I've had monofilament rigs absolutely outfish and mash fluorocarbon rigs. 15 to 17 to 20 pound. It's always been the same color or similar situations. I've tested it so much to the point where there's so many times where it's been a night and day difference on one outfishing the other. But I can't say that one's better than the other. But I will say this: if 9 times out of 10, I'm just going to use monofilament. That water will get super clear, and especially if you're further east into like Destin, the bar, and all that stuff, I may look into more into fluorocarbon. But as far as Alabama surf goes, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to use monofilament. I like that buoyancy. It has that stretch when you're using, a pompano rig. If you have a monofilament leader or a monofilament pompano rig, it has stretch to it already, so it eliminates having to use a shock leader. A shock leader is something you put between your braid and your leader or your rig to give you a little bit of stretch. I used to not use shock leaders, and I started to because I was realizing I was losing fish on hard runs and stuff, especially pompano that are wiry fish. But all in all, I mean, I'd use a swivel, barrel swivel, nothing big. You don't have to have a big swivel. I'd use a longer one drop, go into a size 2 or a size 4 Kell hook down to whatever size pyramid sinker needed for the surf. I'd do for every foot of surf, we do an ounce of weight, kind of like a general rule of thumb. Obviously, if you have a east or west wind, the current may be stronger than the waves are big. So I would say a 2 ounce is probably my overall favorite for distance and doing what you need to do. 2 and 3 is what I use the most. And then, for whiting fishing and such, fishing up close, I would do a similar thing, but I would mirror it and go down to a, sometimes 10 to 12 pound monofilament and 15 at the most, a little bit smaller hook and, small piece of shrimp or fish bites and fish up close, but, use a 1 ounce at max. But I'd say a one drop, single drop dropper rig is kind of my all time favorite. Just does everything. I've caught so many species on it from, catfish and such all the way to pompano and redfish and juvenile cobia and permit and, you name it. So
Yeah.
I think that's the most versatile and such for just everything surf wise.
You're not the first one to tell me that, so I believe in it. And, hell, you dropped a couple of monster bombs right there of knowledge, so I'm already like, I've got notes already on that monofluoro kale. I am a big fan of kales. It just came about by accident, but I like them. I like the distance. And then with circles.
Owner, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, you're good. I was done.
I was just going to say the owner Inshore Slam Kell hook. I wish they made it a size 4, but the smallest they make it's a size 2. That was my all-time favorite hook. It still is when it comes to surf rigs because it's thin wire, it's super sharp, it doesn't rust out on you, and they don't really bend. They will at a point. I've bent a couple on like some really big fish, just couldn't stop. And especially like when you get, the cow nose rays early spring when they start running the beach
Oh
and you
yeah.
start snagging them all the time. But as far as your pumping and all that, no issues out of them. They're super, super, super sharp. The Eagle Claws are obviously way cheaper, but they rust out. So you use that rig all day long until you get all the toothy fish moving in the surf. Man, you can use the same surf rig for months sometimes. And so with having a hook that doesn't rust, this goes so far with that. So that's why I really like those hooks. I mean, there was like $12 for a 24 pack, but it was worth every bit of it because they would really last. I mean, I could tie, I'll go ahead and tie all my rigs, put it in a rig binder, and be done with it for the year, and just tie various colors and floats. But and back to that single drop, and I'll kind of leave it. But the reason I prefer the single drop is because I feel like you get a further cast with that because you have less drag. With that extra drop, that extra hook, that extra bait, extra float, it's kind of killing that cast a little bit. So if you're trying to really get a far cast, then that single drop to me casts a lot further versus like a fish finder or Carolina rig where the weight is above the bait. It's wanting to twirl around and such. It's not as aerodynamic as a dropper rig is. And also too, like if you're looking at fishing up close, even for whiting, I'd use a single drop over a double drop because 9 times out of 10, you're going to catch one fish at a time. Occasionally you'll catch doubles. But I don't want to waste as much time or as much bait. The only time I really fish doubles if I'm doing like bait on one or, a sand fleet on one, shrimp on the other, trying to figure out what's doing better. Sometimes, a bottom hook's going to do better than a top hook. You can do the same bait on each, but if you catch 10 fish, 9 of them are on the bottom hook. So that's telling you that they're focusing more on the bottom versus, a little higher off the bottom. And also too, like I said, you can eliminate your bait process, whether it be colors. You can use uh, man, I would go through so many different variations of rigs and colors and baits and write it all down in a book. And I actually threw the book away. I probably should have kept it. I just thought I wouldn't need it anymore. But, I would do 4 rods, same trough. I would do, pink on top, chartreuse on bottom, shrimp on all hooks. And I would do this color on bottom and, vice versa. And, kind of take a general consensus. And it's, it varies so much to the point where I just stopped caring about it because you never know. It changes every day. One day the purple float will do good, and then the next day it's a pink one. And it don't matter if it's top or bottom. Some days it don't matter what color it is as long as it's closer to the bottom. Some days it don't matter what color it is as long as it's higher off the bottom. So, I would use the double drops to kind of key in what information I wanted and try to figure out, all right, what do they want to be higher up or lower down. But once you kind of got on a hot bite and it was going, then I would use those singles because you're not wasting as much bait. If you do hook 2 big fish, a lot of times those fish would want to pull against each other and break off. And then other times too, like if you're in the presence of, heavy catfish and ladyfish and stuff like that, you're burning up twice as much bait and, you're wasting a lot more tackle when you're having to go through 2 hooks and such. So it's kind of of 100 reasons why you should or shouldn't use it, but that's just kind of what I concluded too. Is the single drop was always my favorite.
There's really nothing even to debate on it. Everything you nailed was a great point right there. So we've got that one crushed. Let's knock out a quick bait check, and then actually that's going to matter because we're going to run into the next important question about that here in just a moment. This is your second bait check of the episode. This bait check is being brought to you by DS Custom Tackle. Head on over to dscustomtackle.com and take a look at all the cool things that they've got going. The new flea bag, a glow-in-the-dark sand flea covered float, real cool. The fruit basket, same thing. Lots of great colors and different pieces on there. Maybe you need some rigs for other types of fishing, or you need to get squid teaser. Maybe you need another piece, that other little beads. They got them. So go check out dscustomtackle.com, get your order in. So with you talking about bait and a perfect meeting there of bait time, what type of bait do you like to use?
Man, that would vary a lot. I know the guys like east in, Pensacola to Navarre and such really rely hardcore on sand fleas. I would man, I mean, hands down, say that a sand flea is a great bait. But there's plenty of times where a fresh frozen piece of shrimp would do more than do a great job. And then there's other times where I would use nothing but fish bites, and not because I wouldn't bring other bait, but it's like there's no reason to even waste bait when they're eating fish bites so well. And then there's other times where, I feel like the fish are super pressured, or it's early in the run, water temp's cooler, whatever it may be, and a ghost shrimp is ideal. I wouldn't say that I use any bait more than another. I feel like the only constant thing, or actually I can tell you this: the two constants I always had were going to be fresh frozen shrimp, not nasty stuff, but something fresh. If you go to your local tackle stores and try to get some what they call fresh dead, for they sell live shrimp, they're going to have dead that die off, or shrimp that die off naturally from being drug in the net and all that stuff. They'll put them in a cup and sell them usually. And even like, if they get some that are frozen, if they're frozen and they're fresh, that's fine. As long as they have natural color to them and they're brown and, shrimp colors and not, bright pink and black, and they're fresh, then there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that works absolutely fine. From beyond that, like I said, sand fleas work great. I can tell you so many times, just like everything else, where I've had four baits out there from ghost shrimp, sand flea, and fresh shrimp and fish bites, and the fish bites will outfish all of them. And then there's days where if you're not throwing the ghost shrimp out there, you're not going to catch a fish. I think to answer that question, the most accurately would just be, be willing to have a variety. Unless you're just catching fish and you're on them and you're, have no issues with what you're doing, you really need to be just kind of prepared to have a little bit of everything. Have a few different flavors of fish bites and colors, and then also, have a sand flea rake with you. Unless it's the really cool months, I wouldn't worry about bringing a sand flea rake because they're not as prevalent. They're not on the Alabama coast anyways. But like spring and summer, I would definitely bring a sand flea rake because you can avoid a lot of trash fish bites by using sand fleas versus using shrimp. But that's also where fish bites are coming into play. It's something tough. If you see little pinfish and stuff messing with your bait, you still have a bait there versus if you're using shrimp or a sand flea, that bait's probably gone after it's sitting there getting screwed with for 10 minutes. So I say there's really no perfect answer for that. I think to me, it's, be willing to have a variety. Obviously you can't do everything, but if you surf fish often, a good bit, it's worth having a ghost shrimp pump. It's worth having and by ghost shrimp, I honestly like the cooler months. I would say November to April on your ghost shrimp. And that's just because they're softer bait. That water temp gets warmer, they're harder to keep on the hook, and then you got more trash fish prevalent that are just going to rip them to shreds. That's when you get those warmer months. That's where sand fleas really take that play as far as natural bait. But I feel like your fresh shrimp and your fish bites are kind of the go-to for a year-round. They're hardy baits. They're easy to get a hold of. You don't have to go catch them, and they're going to catch fish.
Definitely. Moving into the next one, what do you do when you go fishing in a brand new place? Now, the reason I ask this is you are well known throughout the Panhandle. You've fished Florida, Alabama. You've got this whole area covered, and you've been doing it for a long time. So when I ask this one, this one's definitely going to be aimed at that. Hey, all right, I'm coming down from Tennessee to go surf fishing. You're going somewhere new. What's your game plan there?
Man, like I said earlier, all stretches of beach have fish. I think the biggest thing is, looking at your structure and looking at any irregularities and saying like, okay, that looks, there's a cut in that sandbar right there. There's a deep hole right there. I don't see any people swimming in that hole over there because it's a few hundred yards away from behind my condo or this beach access, whatever it may be. So look for irregularities and also keep your tackle simple. Don't do anything super crazy unless you're super confident in this fish in that area. Go as light as leader as possible, smallest hooks as possible. Keep your bait fresh and really just spread your baits out from as far as you can cast to as close as you can cast. And if you got 3 or 4 rods and you can do that, you'll narrow down. If you're not catching fish, well then, man, honestly, depending on the time of year, if it's in time where, let's say April, where the bite should be great, and you're not catching fish, you either need to move spots or you need to change something dramatically with your tackle. If you have, you get to a point where, hey, I've watched all these videos, I've listened to these podcasts, I know the rig I have is fine. The hooks aren't too big, the line's not too heavy. I got fresh bait. I'm not catching fish. What do I need to do? And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing anything wrong. You could just be not in the best spot, and it could look great, but that don't mean the fish are there. So, be willing to move, be mobile. You can't. There's two ways I would do it. Overall, like especially younger, I would either bring a few buddies and a few beach carts and some coolers, and we can set up shop for a day and spend sun up to sundown out there. And you'd have lulls, where you want to catch fish for an hour, and you catch 3 or 4 pompano in 20 minutes all of a sudden because they come through in schools. And be willing to move and find those different areas. And like, hey man, I ain't caught a fish out here in 3 days. I need to go somewhere else because I know people are catching them right now. If you're going from area to area and you're not catching fish, then there's something you need to change, whether it's either finding natural bait, catching it, or buying a different bait, or trying different rigs. Look at where you're casting, but really just keep things honest and keep things where you can change them. Don't throw your bait the same distance on all 4 rods or all 3 rods or all 2 rods every single cast. Don't use the same bait and rig all day, every day in the same spot if you're not seeing results. If you're seeing results, then don't change anything. But if you're not seeing those results, then you got to change stuff until you figure out what's best for you. Because man, none of that stuff is constant. Most of those fish on the beach are moving. They come into where you're at for a reason to eat. But if for some reason that may not be the best spot, so you got to be willing to go on to the next and try to find fish. So
good call. Definitely. And you nailed the big one too. You already nailed the other 2 questions, so we can move into the next section here in just a second. But the big one, I think, is the moving. A lot of people, they grow roots as soon as they come down here, and I get it. You've already hauled all the gear out, you're tired, you just want to enjoy the day. Absolutely, go for it, have a blast. But yeah, if you're out there trying to get that big fish or trying to get dinner on the table, if it's not happening, just move. Do something, change it, bait, tackle. You nailed it all. There's got to be a change there because the fish are there.
yeah,
You just have to find the change you need to make.
yeah, and some people, don't want to move. They want to. That's their relaxation time. They want to go out there and put their chair out, put a few rods out. If they catch a fish, fantastic. If they don't care. And there's nothing wrong with that. You're enjoying your time outdoors. You're enjoying your time on the beach. But man, if you're like dead set on like, hey, I want to catch these fish, like I got. I've had so many people message me over the years. Honestly, hundreds. And like, I'll have people that are buddies or family members come down to the beach and they're like, hey, what day do I need to go fishing? I'm like, all of them. And then they'll be like, well, where do I need to go? I'm like, well, where you staying? I'm like, we'll just go behind your condo. And then, they want 1,000 answers. I'm like, dude, you got to go fishing, man. You need this, you need this, you need this, you need to look for this. But, if you got a 3-day window and you want to fish the whole time and you need to be fishing, not asking where and when you should go all the time. And obviously that every bit of information helps, but, just getting out there and doing it is what's going to give you the results. You look at the people over the years that always catch these fish and, like I was saying earlier, our buddy Chris, I learned so much from Chris and, guys like, man, Chris catches so many fish and all that stuff. I'm like, well, he does, and he knows what he's doing, but the reason he knows what he's doing is because he'd go fish before work and then go work Sam's all day and then go fish all night and go sleep for a few hours and then go fish before work and, fish sun up to sundown the day he's off and, that ridiculous amount of time on the water. And I know not everybody can do that with family and kids and dogs and jobs and such, but, if you got a few minutes and, you got the time and that's what you want to do, you got to put in the time and instead of asking other people where you should be going and what you should be doing, just go sit out there on the beach. You'd be amazed, man. I can't tell how many times where I had the lowest expectations ever and I walked out there and just threw a rod out, just bring 2 rods in my cooler and, throw two rods out and just absolutely have a stellar day. And you're like, well, I wasn't expecting that, but it's just because, you know, wasn't planning on it, wasn't looking at the tide, wasn't looking at anything, just went fishing and, you know, you catch fish. So that's just what you got to do.
Yeah, man. Those are the good days, aren't they?
Yeah.
Oh man, well, you crushed all the fishing tips, so that was good stuff right there. So we'll move right into this last section here, and yeah, this is the educational fun part. It is your third bait check of the episode. Hopefully you've caught a bunch of fish. Like seriously, if you're listening to this at the beach, hopefully you've changed something if you haven't caught fish. I mean, Dusty gave it to you. He gave you the combo. Change the bait, change the rental, change it all. Change spots, do something different. But hopefully you've got a bunch and you're going to be heading home soon and life will be good. This bait check is being brought to you by The Sinker Guy. Head on over to thesinkerguy.com and take a look at everything that Chip's got going on in the Sinker Guy garage. The Mortician rig, he's got it. Maybe you need the Bruno rig, because we don't talk about Bruno. Good rig. And of course, sinkers. He's got it in his name. He's the Sinker Guy. Get your order in there and you're going to be all good. Lots of other great things for terminal tackle and tools on the website. So again, thesinkerguy.com. Get your order in, quick shipping, and awesome customer service. So how I finally got to meet you face to face was a seminar. And you told me there, like, yeah, I've done these a couple times. And a lot of people are like, dude, Dusty's always got really good stuff at these, and you did. Absolutely. Lots of good stuff I learned. What got you into doing seminars?
I worked at Top Gun Tackle in high school. I started at Mo Fishing, and they merged with Top Gun Tackle, and man, it went on and on and on, changing ownerships and such. So that's a whole other story. But you know, in the wintertime, we had you know snowbirds, and obviously you know the wintertime's a slow time. And, you know, 10 plus years ago, you know, before our area, Gulf Shores Orange Beach, got super, super busy like it is now, I mean, you would sit there in a tackle store all day long and twiddle your thumbs. And you'd have an old guy from Wisconsin come in and he'd want to buy two fiddler crabs because, you know, he didn't want a whole dozen. He just wanted enough to go fishing for 10 minutes. And so we were trying to drum up some ways to really, you know, draw people in there. And so we started doing various seminars, inshore and surf fishing and all that stuff. And then, you know, I kind of realized, and it's kind of crazy. So that's kind of how the whole fish bites thing came about in our area. And I'm not going to say by no means I was the reason, but there was a few packs of fish bites that were in there, and they were in a clear plastic Ziploc bag with a sticker that said fish bites. And it was like a red fish logo, and it said fish bites across it. And these guys would come in and ask what it was. And my boss at the time was like, man, get that crap out of here. I'm tired of looking at it. Nobody's ever going to buy it. Just give it away to these, you know, some of these snowbirds. So I did. Well, they come back in asking for more. And I told my boss, I was like, hey, we sold that fish bites. You know, or I gave that fish bites away and these guys wanting more. And he said, well, we're not ordering more. Well, then, you know, those guys were begging, and I had a couple more guys come in and say, hey, you know, I heard someone's been down the beach was using so-called fish bites catching fish. And finally, I talked him into letting me order like 6 bags from our distributor. I sold those 6 bags that week. And nobody else, I mean, Walmart, none of the other tackle stores around town carried them. We were the only people that had them. Like, I mean, as far as I know, in our area, period. I don't know about like, you know, Pensacola and East, but as far as Alabama coast, nobody over there had them. And so, you know, it kind of, you know, more and more people, you know, a lot of the snowbirds surf fish and sheepshead fish. I mean, that's really what they did. You know, over the years, more guys bring their boats down and such. But, you know, we had a lot of guys that come down and they would want to, you know, learn more about surf fishing. And I guided surf fishing, you know, even in high school. I would walk across the street before I could drive and have my beach cart out behind the shop and take people surf fishing after work at 5 o'clock, you know, during starting the spring break time of year. And so to drum up some more business in the store, I told my boss, I was like, man, let's have a seminar, you know, and just, you know, we'll get a couple packs of Cokes next door at Winn-Dixie. I was back when Rouse's in Orange Beach was Winn-Dixie. I said, we'll get a couple packs of Cokes and some cookies and, you know, put some chairs up here. We rented some chairs from actually one of the ladies that worked there, Miss Jeannie. Her brother had a bunch of chairs. And, I got Chris Fetche, I got, Bill Willis, a few different people here and there to do inshore guides and stuff, and or inshore seminars, and I would do some of the surf stuff. And at that age, I thought I knew everything, and I really didn't. I didn't know half of what I knew. I didn't know a quarter of what I knew now, but I knew enough to where, I felt confident in what I was telling these guys was enough, because a lot of these guys from up north, if you take a trip up to the Midwest, these guys are outdoorsmen. They're not Southern, but they're rednecks, in their own way, and they fish and they hunt all year long. And so, they have different tactics and techniques, but they're fishermen. And so they're willing to learn. And, some of those guys are older and a little more ornery and, a little more hard headed. So it's harder to kind of teach some of those guys things. But if they saw other people catching fish, they want to figure out what that guy was doing. So by fishing on the beach and running these trips and, fishing next to a lot of these guys, I can't tell you, man, those guys I still talk to this day that I met over 10 years ago, that were fishing next to me on the beach, and, never went on and got a trip with me, didn't buy a lot of tackle from me, but they just, they'd walk up and talk and see what I was doing, and then they would mirror that. And, not that what I was doing was better, but what they were doing just wasn't necessarily ideal. And so, guys started getting more into the surf rigs and more into the surf rods. And we went from selling a few surf rods to a bunch of surf rods, and having these little seminars at Top Gun and stuff. We'd have a couple of winter, we do like a Christmas one and, a February one before the spring really kicked off. And then we started doing some series up to Floribama. And then, it kind of went crazy from there. And we did various ones. And the biggest one I was a part of was with Chris Becce, and Matt Isabel was there. That was right when he was getting started with everything. And then David Thornton was there. David Thornton. And David's like, they call the Pure Pounder, very knowledgeable guy about, just weather and tides and fish and stuff like that. And man, we had did a sign up for that and ended up with, I think there was like almost 300 people there. It's a free event, and we had rented the community center out for this, put up like 100 chairs, and they were filled an hour before the show even started, and there were people standing outside, nowhere to park, and we were just like, holy crap. Like,
wow.
we weren't, we were expecting 50 or 60 people. We weren't expecting, and I don't remember the count. We got a head count. We had a few people counting for us, and it was over 200 people. I mean, it was astronomical. And so, just doing stuff like that, just, kind of picked up. But I enjoyed doing it. Being in tackle sales, you got to put yourself out there to, have your face out there and sell stuff. But, like I said, just talking with people and helping people. I mean, there's guys that are willing to learn and like, hey, what do I need to do this? Do I need to go on a guide trip? Do I need to buy this? And sometimes it's not even that. It's just like, hey, you just change this right here and you're good to go. So, different avenues, different venues came available to do that stuff. And I did it. I jumped on it. And, the tackle stores I worked at always supported us and helped us in, doing those things and helping people out and getting people on fish. And, that's like the Pomp Stomp came about, and the whole surf fishing craze came about. And, it just grew over the years. I mean, man, I just remember being in high school and surf fishing, and like you'd be the only person out there. And now it doesn't matter what beach you go to, there's somebody doing it. And whether they started from, a few years back to watching some of these YouTube guys, that's what got them into it. It's just so big now because of all that stuff. And so it's cool to see for sure. Like I said, all these people learn from different people, and, there's no, I guess that's my favorite thing about surf fishing is there's no one or only way to do it. Like, the stuff that Blake Hunter does in Destin and such is completely different than what I would do in Orange Beach Gulf Shores. But Blake's a great surf fisherman, you know what I mean? So it's just learning stuff from different guys along the years and just helping people catch fish. I mean, that's what got me into teaching these seminars and all that. And when you're younger, you think like, man, I know all kinds of stuff. And as you get older, you realize that you really didn't. If I could go around and reteach all the ones I did when I was, 17, 18, 19 years old, I would probably slap myself in the face for some of the stuff I said. But, this is part of growing up, and you kind of humble yourself a little more. But, still good information, but not half of what I knew now. So
yeah. I shouldn't have sent you the questions before the podcast because you're like nailing them all throughout when you're talking. It's like, yep, you got that one. Yep, you got that one. I don't need to ask that. Yeah, you got that one. almost
I
almost
like to
regret
talk,
sending.
man. I love to talk.
Oh, dude, it's all good. I am very thankful for it, and as you can see, I haven't stopped you, and I have no intention of it because you're flowing with great information and knowledge, and it's. I get some people that are like, oh, well, hold on, I can't digest it. That's one of the things I love about these podcasts because you can be like, hold up, what was that? You can back it up. You can start that
Hmm.
section back over and get that knowledge and get yourself set up for, oh, okay, I understood that. But when you're at a seminar and you're pounding through things so much, you've only got so much time and so much you can do. And like you said with that event, you planned on 100 and you got 300. Well, that became 300 questions. So
Oh yeah.
there's a lot of pieces there. But yeah, you nailed the entire thing on seminars. So well played, sir. We'll just go right into the final questions here. One of the biggest ones that I want to back it up is you were talking about fly fishing in the surf, and that's something that
Hmm.
you're going to be pushing heavier on and going that route. What made you want to start doing that?
You know, I started fly fishing, in high school, and I say started fly fishing. I really just dabbled in it. I bought a fly rod from Bass Pro and kind of played around with it, and it was just something different. Like I'd surf fish, I deck canned offshore, and inshore fish and wade fish and kayak fish, and did all this different stuff, and it's just something different. And I quickly got frustrated with it. And I was like, screw this. I don't know who would want to torture themselves like this. And I can't think of the amount of people that would come into the store and ask about fly fishing around. Like, hey, is anybody fly fishing around here? I'm like, not if they're smart. I mean, why would they waste their time doing that? And, you know, just one of those things you say when you're a, punk teenager. And so years go on, and I'm here. I am guiding full time, and me and another buddy of mine that guided, we decided to take a trip to the mountains. Him and his buddy and his dad were going to North Carolina trout fishing for a couple weeks, and we're at this September, just wrapped up the busy season. Pockets full of money from guiding, um, all the inshore trips and stuff, and it's hot as Hades, at the beginning of summer, or I
Oh
mean, I'm
yeah,
sorry, at the beginning of September, and you're like, man, I just anything to get out of this heat and do something different. So I go trout fishing with them in the mountains, and we were all fly fishing, and man, I was just like, man, this is awesome. And then from there, it started a craze. I'm like, I want to start fly fishing more. So then we get back and we're dock light fishing, and we're on a light just loaded with redfish, and they'll eat any fly that comes through there. But I couldn't cast my fly line 60 feet far enough to get it into the dock light. My buddy Taylor is sitting there hooked up every cast with his, goofy grin he's always got. And I just got so frustrated. I'm like, man, I got to figure this out, and then it just created a monster. And, you know, here I am a few, years later with, I'm looking at a dozen fly rods in my office, and, doing it for so many different things. And it really adds another level of, I don't want to say technique to it. I mean, you gotta want it, you gotta love it to put up with fly fishing. There's definitely a time and place for it. There's guys that are purists that only want to catch something on a fly rod, and I love catching stuff on the fly rod, but there's a time and place for it. If the wind's blowing and all that stuff, I'm not gonna deal with it. It's like I want to catch fish. But then there's other times where, you can compare it to bow hunting, where if you want to catch this fish on your fly rod, if you don't take your fly rod, it's not going to happen. If you
yeah.
don't only fish that fly rod, it's not going to happen. This past Saturday, I mean, 3 days ago, I was on the flats all day long, and I blew various great shots on redfish. And I could have caught that fish with a spinning rod, but because I was using a fly rod, I blew it for various reasons, where threw the fly right on top of their head, or we were drifting too fast, whatever it may be. And so it adds the next level of, kind of difficulty to it. And like I said, back to bow hunting, if you want to kill a deer with a bow and you take your rifle every time, you're not going to shoot that deer with your bow. Same thing with a fly rod to me. And so it just added a different level of kind of, you know, difficultness to it, and you know, just a whole other love for it, and then you get into fly tying, and that's really what kind of pushes you over the edge on falling in love with it, because you take something that you tied, and especially if you use something that has, a deer hair that you from a deer you harvested, and a duck you harvested, and a squirrel you harvested, and you make something out of it. You kill it and you harvest that stuff, and you use every bit of that animal, put it on a hook, and then you're catching redfish and trout and largemouth bass on it. It kind of completes the full circle for you, and you learn to appreciate things a little more. So that's kind of where I'm at in my fishing journey right now. Is I love to catch fish. Like I said, I keep a spinning rod in my truck for wherever I go, but I also got a fly rod too, and it's kind of pushed things to the next level. And uh, when I was there, I didn't utilize the time I had on the beach fly fishing. I've caught plenty of fish off the beach on a fly rod, but I didn't spend as much time as I should have on the beach with a fly rod, or could have, I should put it that way. And so that's really my next goal as I, go back to the coast on my weekend trips and such, is spending time walking the beach with my fly set up, and trying to catch fish. And the thing is, throwing a jig and twitch bait all the time. You're like, man, I want to catch trout, or I want to catch pompano, and that's great. But when you're fly fishing, I mean, honestly, any bite other than a hard-head catfish is appreciated. If it's a ladyfish, it's like, man, this is a blast. So it kind of lets you step back and really appreciate every bite you get. I mean, if you get a day where you're walking the beach and throwing a fly rod and catching ladyfish and bluefish, and the occasional pompano and occasional whiting and jacks and such. I mean, every other cast. I mean, man, that's an absolute blast. So, you kind of step back and really appreciate stuff, and it's super fun. And there's some things with the surf that, just being honest with you, fly fishing like in mountain streams to lakes to rivers to, on the flats, I would say surf fishing, I won't say it's the hardest, but it can be probably the most frustrating, because there's a few little big pieces of gear you have to have that really make you successful off the beach. And without those, I don't want to say you're wasting your time, but it makes it very difficult. And to me, one being a stripping basket. If you have a stripping basket, to strip your fly line into your waistline, keeps it from getting wrapped up around your feet, getting washed around with a surf line. Um, and it's just so much more of a pleasant experience. And then second behind that would be an intermediate fly line. So a full intermediate fly line, you have a floating line that completely stays on the top. Then you have what they call intermediate, which is kind of like a neutral buoyant. It doesn't float, but it doesn't necessarily sink. It just kind of does what it does. And you have sinking lines that, have a weighted tip on them and such, and they actually sink at a rate. If you do that mid-range to intermediate, it allows you to kind of fish that line straight through the surf without getting on top of the waves and getting bounced around. You get a lot more control over your fly line. And so to me, those two things right there are something that would, I can't tell you how many times I walked the beach with a fly rod, when I was younger, and be like, man, this is the stupidest thing anybody could ever do, ever. And then once you kind of figure out those few little things that, help you, and those few little gear things, I mean, it's crazy the difference it makes and the success you can have.
Dude, you blew my mind. I've only started getting some information on fly fishing in the surf, and that's mostly because of Larry Grossman in our area. He's really crushing it, doing great things. He's a lifelong fly fisherman, and just a lot of great knowledge and doing fun stuff over here. But yeah, mid-range, a weighted line, wow. That's a lot to process. So you've got a whole you got a whole adventure with that in itself. And thank you for giving us just a view of what kind of game you got to play to get into that, man. Seriously, really thank you for that. Really good piece of knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's, man, if in my opinion, like if you're in the Panhandle area, two people know some really good fly tires for, fly fishing flies, as far as surf fishing use. Like Nick Lejos is over in the Destin area. I think that's how you say his last name. And he's got, some famous sand flea patterns, but also, as far as experience goes, Chris Vetche's been doing it for a long time. Tons of trout and redfish and pompano off the beach, as well as Sam Sumlin. And Sam is, a designer and such, a photographer, videographer, super talented, but also owns Space Coast Flies, and I think he's part owner. But man, they sell all kinds of great flies for just inshore stuff, but also surf fishing stuff. A lot of pompano flies and beach trout flies, something worth looking into. And Sam spends probably, I would safe to say, probably more time on the beach than really anybody I know as far as just throwing a fly rod. I mean, if he goes fishing, he's throwing a fly rod, and that dude walks the beach just about every day in the season and catches a lot of fish. He's actually coming up to Montgomery. I just started a fly fishing club in this area, and he's coming up next month to do our next meeting on fly fishing the surf and tying pompano flies and all that stuff, and we're super excited about that. So he's a wealth of knowledge, and if you are a fly fisherman and wanting to get into doing some stuff on the surf, he's definitely somebody to reach out to get some flies. Man, they got some killer prices and super fast shipping and stuff. So kind of a shameless plug for Sam, but man, they do some killer work over there.
Please do plug. I mean, that's the great thing about this podcast. Plug any business you can when you can, because I mean, all we can do is learn from each other, learn from these other ones that have made the products, and help each other out. So yeah, no bad is on the plug. That was good. Well, let's get you into the last two questions and get you out of here. The first of the one is going to be: what knowledge would you give to a brand new? Hey, I want to start surf fishing. What kind of knowledge would you give to him?
If it's something that you plan on doing, for years and long term, which somebody that fishes, and if you're not a fisherman and you're just getting to be a fisherman, period, obviously it's hard to spend the money on just anything, especially if it's just a potential hobby. And from that next step, it's if you're a fisherman and you already fish a lot, and you have various angles of your tackle, obviously you can figure out what you already own to try to use in the surf fishing world. But what I'm getting at is really don't cheat yourself on buying junk for surf fishing simply because you don't know if you're going to like it. It's something, if you go on vacation, say you go on vacation, there's people that go to the beach on vacation 5, 6 times a year. And, it doesn't sound like a lot, but if you go for 3 or 4 days, 5, 6 times a year, you're looking at 20 something trips to the beach. And if you want it to last more than a few years, you really want to buy something that's somewhat quality. So if you go buy a $48 combo from Walmart or from wherever, you may get a year out of it if you're lucky, if you really take good care of it. So I would say, to me, there's so much information out now, from podcasts to YouTube videos to all that stuff, that you can really spend a day researching and be like, all right, I think I got this. But when you really start getting into it, the biggest thing that matters is your tackle, and not that any one thing is better than another. It's kind of like the Ford and Chevy thing. There's no rod and reel. I mean, like, I have plenty of favorite surf rods, but there's 100 other that would probably do the job. You get really technique specific with things, like whether it's a Ninja rod or a Star rod or whatever it may be. I mean, there's 1,000 things that'll do the job, but you don't want to cheat yourself and buy the cheapest thing possible just to kind of dabble in it. And what I mean by that is, it's hard to put a lot of money in something you may not know what you're doing. But when you have something that's a little nicer, the experience goes a long way, because by having that nice tackle, you ease your experience on, hey, this thing's not a piece of junk. It didn't fail on me, after my third trip out. It casts so much better. It casts so much further. The reel drag is great. This braided line that I spent this money that I think is ridiculous on, casts so much better. I got so much more line on here, and I landed that big fish because I had it. Not everybody has all the money in the world to spend on tackle, and I get that. I mean, we've all been there. But try to get the best bang for your buck. Go to a local tackle store. Really talk to the guys that do it and know what they're talking about, and talk to various guys and talk to various people on Facebook. I mean, there's so many Facebook pages now, and just be honest and say, hey, look, I'm looking at getting my first setup. I want to spend this and much, between this and this. What are my options? And you're going to have probably 20 different people say 20 different things, and not that one of them's better than another, but you got to be willing to me, like I said, buy what's best, the best bang for your buck, and what's going to last you. And by doing so, you'll stay interested in it a lot longer. And I can tell you so many examples of it, in the outdoor world, from like I said, bow hunting to time flies to you name it. If you buy cheap stuff and junk, you're gonna be like, all right, I don't like doing this, and you're gonna have a bad experience, and you're gonna give it up a lot quicker. You have something that's a little nicer, you're gonna put a little more time into it, and you're gonna get a lot more time out of that gear by doing so. And I know that's really not something that's just straight fishing related as far as a technique, hey, where do I go? What do I do? But to me, man, that goes for bass fishing to fishing for in a pond for bluegill to crappie fishing to, fly fishing. If you don't have to spend $1,000 on a combo, but if you put a little money and get something that's halfway decent, you'll be so much more pleased with your experience because you're going to get more longevity out of it and a better use out of your gear.
I think the worry people worry about too is like, oh, why do I need to spend $300? No, you don't. My first
No,
setup was, I think my very first setup was a 11-foot beach runner and a Shimano was on sale. I think I spent it was a 5,000. Yeah, it was a 5,000 series. I think I maybe spent $105 with line and on the rod and reel setup, and I was out the door. It was perfect.
yeah,
Everything was great. So you don't have to spend a ton, but learn the gear that you're using, and then yeah, if you're gonna make this a longevity run, exactly what you said. Look at some of the longer lasting. So cool stuff right there, and great to go. Let's nail the last one for you so we can get you home. What's next for you?
man. I think the biggest thing, I can finally say, after years of living on the coast and doing various things from guiding and washing boats and deckhanding offshore and all that stuff, and um, all the crazy things I've done, I finally have a job that's kind of a career that has a retirement, has insurance, and all those things. And I'm engaged and moved, away from I guess you could say home, a little further north to Montgomery, Alabama, in order to be closer to my fiance and have a job and make some decent money and such. And by doing so, it's allowed me to, I'm not doing the things I love for work anymore, which sometimes I miss, and there's plenty of times where I definitely don't. When I go now, I appreciate every minute of it because I don't get to do it as much. I took that stuff for granted when I was going all day, every day, and now I go, every few weekends. So um, I think just spending time traveling and fishing is what's biggest for me. And I just started a club in Montgomery, the Montgomery Area Fly Fisher, or it's actually called the Yellowhammer Fly Fishing Club. As of last night was our final agreement on the name, but kind of have a social gathering because there's a lot of people up here that are into it. And I've also started volunteer with a Mayfly project, and they have a chapter in Auburn where we pretty much teach and take children in the foster system fly fishing, and it is it's super fun. I volunteered because I like to just kind of do whatever I can to help on anything, and I got a bit a bit hesitant on it at one point, and then I went to the first meeting, and I was like, oh man, no, I can't not miss any more of these because the kid I had, he just loved the outdoors, loved to hunt and fish, and these kids have rough lives, and they just want somebody to be there and teach them this stuff. So I'm trying to do what I can to donate as much time as I can to whatever I can to help people, help the fishery, help conservation. And that's something that too, as I've gotten older, I don't kill, I really don't kill any fish anymore versus when I was, 18, 19, it was like, if it swam, it was going in the cooler. And so, that's something that I've tried to focus on and pushing on to other people and helping other people is, you know, letting people realize that you don't have to keep everything and trying to teach people to fish and just various things like that. I guess you could say focusing on the future for other people and trying to change people's outlook on fisheries. And I'm very young. I'm only 27, and I don't want to sound like an old timer. I know I said that earlier, but you know, looking at how the fishery is different now from when it was 10 years ago, and listening to the guys that taught me how to fish, and they were talking about what it was 10 years from then, and 30 years ago, and 40 years ago, and it's just not even close. And and you can, some people would argue that and say it's the same or better, and some people would say, man, it's terrible. But I feel like a general consensus. I mean, I listen to so many podcasts, from fly fishing to freshwater fishing to saltwater to the Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report, you name it. And people butter up things, but when you listen to a lot of these guys like fishing legends, like I listen to the Millhouse podcast a lot with Andy Mill, and you get a lot of these guys like Flip Hallett and the guys that were in the Keys and stuff years ago, and you listen to, it's almost depressing sometimes because they talk about how great the fishing was 30, 40 years ago or 50 years ago, and how it's just not even the same, and it's still good to some people that didn't know it any better, but not to what it was. So kind of the same with me is, I'm young. I grew up fishing that area down at the coast, and it's changed dramatically. There's still plenty of good fishing to be had. By no means do I mean, oh, it's terrible, it's ruined, or anything like that. I mean, conservation exists for a reason, though, and I think that's my biggest focus, is just trying to do what I can to be an advocate for the outdoors and the fishery, and help people understand, especially with kids. There's a reason why laws exist. There's a reason why limits exist, and these things change for a reason, and most of the time for the better. People complain like, oh, they're taking this away from us now, and it's really not the case. I mean, you look at what they did with flounder in Alabama a couple of years ago. They closed it down for November, and they made the length limit a little longer, and last year was the best flounder fall, and the year before some of the best flounder years we've had in probably 7 or 8 years because of a 1 year of change. So that's the stuff I look at constantly is what we as a whole can do as a fishing society and a fishing community, can get together and change and get everybody on the same page. Like, hey, if we all did this and we all thought this way, man, there's no telling what the fishery could be like. But unfortunately, a lot of people are on the same page. So I'd say that's what's on my agenda as far as the fishing world, is doing what I can to teach people and help whatever I can do, and I mean anything like that, to just do my part to help the fishery.
Good on you, man. Real good on you, and I know you're going to be successful at that. Well, Dusty, thank you so much. You've given a ton of knowledge tonight, and I appreciate all the time that you did. This is going to be a great episode. I'm very excited to be able to air this out. I know people are going to learn from it, and seriously, I hope for nothing but the best things for you, man, up north with the new club and everything you're doing. I look forward to seeing it on social and following you there, and just, again, thank you so much for coming on the show, brother. Appreciate it.
I really appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope this episode was helpful for you, because it was a ton of knowledge, and I have got a page full of notes. So lots of cool things in here. I hope you got something out of it too. If this show helped you, by all means, send us a message. Don't forget to share it out. Help somebody else learn how to fish. That's what we can do. We can only help each other get better at this, and that is one of the biggest missions of this podcast. Is I want you to have as much knowledge as you possibly can from the locals, from the people in that area, from the industry professionals, the people that are making the rigs, the gear, the things that are here. I want you to be able to hear about it this way without having to wonder. So I appreciate you coming on this journey. I appreciate your time, and it's just awesome. I'll see you next week. You've been listening to Finding Demo Surf Fishing. I'm out of here. Part 1 done. Nice job, dude. Seriously. I mean, you know that already. Hell of a job.